closed session was, there it is. Closed session was held in order to protect the public interest, whereby discussion will be had regarding potential anonymous donor and parameters of said donation to the law enforcement center. Any action on the part of the board? No action is needed. Okay, next agenda item, Jay Anderson. Discuss the jail committee meeting.
Yeah, I'm going to do, I know we'll also have committee reports, so since this also has the committee report, I'll just, which is, I believe, on the back, right, Mary? Did you make a copy of these and put on the back, the jail committee report?
Yes.
We held a regular meeting on January 27th, and jail committee members are myself, board member Lisa Kramer, board member Andy Andreessen, also on the committee is Sheriff Mike Robinson, Chief Deputy Kevin Willis, and Captain Rob Bellamy. Purpose of this meeting was to draw consensus, at least from the meeting group, on what we could do to move forward, because we all agreed we felt it was very important that we need to start moving forward instead of just constantly battling back and forth over what option we're going to do, which is doing nobody any good. So we discussed forming consensus on moving forward with the jail project, and we reviewed all the options that were currently on the table. And we started off by trying to figure out items that we all agreed on. One of them was moving the final design to the final process where the architects were engaged again and we were moving forward on actually what I call a normal process that most boards do when they engage in this type of process. Why this one got 50 different ways, I don't know, and I'm not blaming anybody, but the desire for the committee was to get it back on track. A 60-bed design would not meet our needs into the future. We wanted to eliminate the liability of personnel transporting inmates over great distances, and I will tell you, this is at the top of the list. Nobody on this committee sleeps very well at night knowing that we have personnel and we have inmates in our care that have to be transported all over northeast Nebraska and sometimes as far out to the middle of the state. We did agree that the facility needed to incorporate at least a 75-bed or greater jail. And a new type of law enforcement center, preferably separate if we could from the jail. Items of dissent, of course, were what options to move forward with, and I think if anybody has been following this, there's two entrenched sides. One wants option 2, the other one wants to stay option 1, and really when you look at it, we're getting away from what the main goal here is. The main goal is to not be transporting prisoners all over the state and to provide a jail where we can house those people. So with that in mind, we decided the most important thing, consensus-wise, was to get back in the process with the architect and to start working on not only looking again at the on-site option 1, as something feasible couldn't be decided or done for option 1, then to move on to option 2. We believe that there's enough changes since the original design, new information that there is a possibility of doing something on option 1, but again, we're understanding that option 2 is also there. After laying everything out, the committee came to consensus and a motion that we had, I ran by the county attorney also on it, and sent it back to the committee, and everybody was in consensus on this motion. So at this time, I would like to bring that motion. And I'm going to read that now. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to affirm Washington County's responsibilities as stated in the for Hoskin Associates June 27, 2016 amendment letter, which was in the back part of the agenda. Amended paragraph C, specifically Washington County agrees to negotiate and enter into an AIA owner-architect agreement with Prohoskin Associates for design and construction phase services for the proposed Washington County Law Enforcement Center contingent upon successful financing of the project.
Second motion.
We have a motion on the floor and a second by Anderson, second by Kramer. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's printed to reaffirm the Washington County's responsibilities in the Prohaska letter. Discussion.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I guess I just don't quite understand why this motion is even being made, that we have an affirmative letter. If the motion's being made, that means that I can vote again, as I did before, to vote it down. So either we have an affirmative letter already in place, or we don't. So with that, that's just my take on the motion. Either we do or we don't. It's not, this looks like we said we have one. I don't know why we're voting on this, but there's an option here, because this takes us out of what I figure is competitive bidding by doing this. So I'm not opposed. I've tried to move forward with the jail. I've tried to put the jail on site because that was the most physical and feasible, responsible thing to do. So that's my take on this. I don't, if we already have something in place, I don't see any reason to, it appears to me that when you're voting on something, you have the option to vote it up or down again. And so if they voted the last time not to, I can't support this again. That's just my comments, my opinion on this end down here. So,
Any more discussion?
Kind of what, it may not be exactly on what you're talking about, but what Jay turned around and said, we talked about it at the meeting down in the auditorium, building a 65 jail facility, which is all we're going to be able to build here on site.
Well, now, again, we don't know that. That was on old assumptions. There's some different things that have changed, and we would not go with an on-site if we couldn't do at least a 75 bed.
Yeah, that's where I said with that. It's kind of ludicrous to go ahead and do a 65 bed one, and you know it's going to be.
That's not what we're discussing here, though. That's not the motion. Other discussion on the motion on the floor. I agree with Steve Kruger. I'm the one that signed the letter. I signed the letter. I see no rationale to do a reaffirmation of something that's already signed. That letter's in effect, and because it does have a signature on it, both Prohaska signed it, I signed it, Steve Riley signed it, both Prohaska and I signed it, so I see no reason to reaffirm that letter. I see no reason for it. Can the county attorney have an opinion?
The question I was asked involved the current state of affairs as it exists with Prohaska. What my suggestion was in regards to the motion is we've had issues in the past with old board and new board. An old board cannot necessarily bind a new board. We've talked about that before. So when I was asked the question of why would we be reaffirming, there have been, at least in the public, some comments about the fact we do not have a contractual relationship with Prohaska. I don't agree with those comments. I've always been of the opinion that we have a contract to make a contract. The liability, I believe, to the county for not continuing is substantial as far as my estimations go. So when it was asked of me to solve the question, I suggested that because an old board had previously done that, it might be prudent for the new board with 4 new members to make that decision, vote to affirm, and I think it says reaffirm there as well, the commitment of Washington County to enter into a contract with Prohaska so that we can move forward. That's what I was asked, and that was the answer that I gave.
That begs Steve's question, though. That means that we can vote this down.
You can certainly vote however you'd like. If you choose not to reaffirm, I still believe we're in a contractual relationship. However, I think you would be sending a message in regards to what exactly it is your intentions are. If we are headed to a breach of that contract or what we are doing. Again, I believe that from my understanding and talking to other lawyers as well as some other people, I believe that the liability is anywhere from 10 to 15% of what we know to be the contractual price. As far as the numbers I've had, it is 12 million or 15 million according to the study we were given. 10% of that is 1.2 to 1.5 million. I believe that that liability is substantial for a breach. I believe that I don't know why we would open ourselves up to that kind of liability. You certainly can. Certainly by voting against this, I think you are sending that message. We've already had a lot of stuff in the public where I myself have been preparing for some things on my end because of statements or other things that have been out there. So to me, if you are going to vote against it, you can realize that I believe you're opening the county up to that kind of liability. So from my standpoint, we already have an agreement, I agree. Again, you have the problem of old board, new board, we've been down that road, which is why I suggested to Jay that you would reaffirm this and move forward, enter into a contract with Prohaska and be done with it.
I go back to my same premise. I've already signed the letter, and the letter stands as signed. There's no reason to reaffirm this. Comment from the public.
Jeff Quist, 148-18, County Road 14. My question on this is, I looked at the agenda item and I'm curious, are we contracting for just services here? Is that what this?
We need to re-engage the architect to move forward with the final design.
Okay, so it's services that don't have to be bid. Is that the premise?
No, they're part of it's part of this June 22nd letter that they were.
But is the premise that since it is professional services, that this doesn't have to be bid? Has there been any look to see what other firms would charge on a?
Yeah, you had that chance at the beginning of this process, and you decided to forego that.
But I wanted to know, is that what we're doing here? Is it just for services?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so you don't have to bid it. We're bringing it back up again for reaffirmation. And you've got 4 new board members here. My thought on this is I didn't, when this was voted on before, I thought it was just for the study, the citizens group study. My question about this is, do we know what the fees that are going to be charged by the Prohaska group? Is there any kind of a fee schedule out there that we can compare to maybe what other firm might charge? Is there any maximums, minimums in the number of hours? If this is going to be a contractor, is there anything spelled out? I don't know what it currently says. Here's another thing that people have been saying, well, the hospital was on a job and then they were removed and all this kind of stuff. That came up late yesterday. I don't know whether it's right or wrong. All I know is about those kinds of issues. If there's a contract performance issue, I don't know if the committee has looked at this or not, but I do know in our past history that the board was not informed of a contractor that was had the possibility of being substandard. It was a low bid. It was taken, and then we found out there was a name change. There are some other things on there, and we're still in litigation over this thing for 5 or 6 years. I don't know how long it's been, but it's been a fair amount of time. So there's a couple of things that I wanted to bring up, and maybe some of the board members aren't aware of some of the past history of hiring contractors and just doing diligence on it and trying to find not always the lowest price, but the best price for the county and the taxpayers. So with that, I don't know what the jail committee has done. I'm not part of it, but those are just some questions that I would ask to see what the comments might be. Sure. Sure.
Back when the board engaged Prohaska, did that board conduct due diligence at that time?
When we first
Sexual firm?
when we first contracted with Prohaska, it was an under $20,000 process, so we took informal bids. As I recall, Rob Bellamy got proposals from 4 different companies. On his recommendation, Prohaska was selected. So that was the initial start with Prohaska.
Was that done through a formal board process, or is that just done through Rob doing it on his?
He conducted the search for the folks, and it was his recommendation that Prohaska was hired. But that was just for a need study. This is beyond a need study right now. We're talking about spending real dollars. That answer your question?
Well, just a second, to go along with what you're saying, when I signed this letter, the June 22nd letter, I was not of the opinion, and since then the county attorney has corrected me. But I was of the opinion that this was not exclusive because the word negotiate was in there. And this to me is not a contract because whatever's in the four corners of this paper is really in the four corners of the paper. What is not included in this paper are some of the things you talked about. The scope of the project, timelines, compensation, limitations, responsibilities. None of those things are within the four corners of this paper. So those all need to be negotiated before we can do anything else.
I don't know if the board knows what those costs are.
Yeah.
I don't know, you know.
But that, I mean.
The committee doesn't have that. I don't know what their due diligence is.
But to me, it's fairly clear in this letter that we need to negotiate before we can move forward with Prohaska. And, you know, and negotiations may be successful. If they're successful, you know, that's fine.
Well, and
None of those items are in the four corners of this paper, so those all need to be negotiated.
And furthermore, you know, there's still discussion on site selection. I think that's on for further discussion. But, you know, maybe that discussion should be had before you move forward and spend more money chasing around before you have a site. That's all I'm saying. And maybe that'll be resolved for the days of
And I do not think that a negative vote on this motion constitutes that we want to violate the letter, or the letter submitted on June 22nd.
Yeah, all I'm just saying is that the
Yeah.
cost disclosed, we know what it's going to be.
Yep.
And I don't know. Maybe the committee doesn't know that.
No, we don't, that's why we want to move forward and find out.
But I
what the
think
costs
you need to
are.
find out what that is first.
Yeah,
Which is why the motion includes negotiate.
yeah.
I see no reason for the motion, I really don't, because the letter's signed and it stands.
Carl, do you see harm?
I just don't see the reason for it. That's.
But is there any harm?
I'm going to reserve my opinion.
If I may, one more time. Would you want to do negotiation before you enter into a contract?
Yep. Early on, and I finally got a letter from Steve Riley to cap the limitations. Paragraph C was put in, portion of county responsibilities, but because the word negotiate was in there, I didn't feel that this was an exclusive contract to use for hospital. The county attorney and I have since had discussion on that, and, you know, our opinions differ somewhat, but I'm willing to stand by the letter that we need to negotiate before we can do any design or construction.
So you're saying that you feel that this vote is redundant?
It's redundant,
Okay,
absolutely. The letter's already signed.
so if you're along Mr. Quislap's comment, once you want to negotiate before you do this, that vote, the vote that came about because of that letter, that you didn't negotiate then. I mean, this is a redundant vote, so whatever you're tied, whatever you believe you're tied, bound to right now, you're not going to be bound to anything more than that by reaffirming this.
So why do we need to vote for it? That's my premise. There's no reason to reaffirm.
Because we have an over a 50% change in the board, and I believe this board should be on record.
Are we gonna revote every contract and every letter that we have?
No,
Because we have.
Can I answer that?
Absolutely, you're on the board.
There is one reason why, because the county attorney recommended it. And if the county attorney recommends it as a board, unless we have no confidence in him, we should heed his advice. And so,
And I appreciate that, Jay, because at being at several of these meetings now, it bears restating that you've said when your county attorney or when your attorney is advising you something, you better damn well listen. And I would say that this is
Can I
one of those
clarify one thing?
Sure.
And no offense to the county attorney is hired by the taxpayers. The county attorney does not represent the board. The county attorney, when requested by the board, will provide an opinion by state statute under state statute to not charge a fee to the county. Jay went ahead and made that request of an opinion. The county attorney gave him an opinion. But please understand that. He is not our attorney per se, okay? We have the right to ask for an opinion. That opinion was asked. Just clarification.
Okay, but as far as I know, have you received any other legal opinions on this from any other people that passed the bar that?
No, that was prevented because I had, and it was an agreement with Woods and Aiken to discuss this issue, and that was voted down by the board. So when that invoice is still pending, we've not received an invoice, but that invoice is going to be paid.
So I would, again, as a taxpayer here, I would ask you to listen to the person that, as chairman has said, that we hired to represent the county in legal matters. I would ask you to take what he says to heart. Thank you.
Other discussion? If not, call for the question. And just for clarification, the motion is to reaffirm the June 22nd, the Hoskins Associates letter to Washington County.
Okay, 5 members voting aye, Lorenzen and Kruger no, so motion carries.
Okay, next is a discussion that I put on to place with the new Washington County Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice Center on the Washington County Courthouse grounds, or placement at an off-site location yet to be determined by the Washington County Board of Supervisors. I did pass out, I received information yesterday, and Dennis McCormick gave me a call and said that there's a couple of these for the public. Dennis McCormick gave me a call and said that this property just come on the market. I talked with the, Andrew Bennett is the agent for the Lund Company. This is an 8.49 acre site, just to the west of the Petromart on the First Street and north and south of Highway 30. It's zoned industrial, and sale price is $832,000 for 8.49 acres. But that site is available. I have not been out there to take a look at it. Jay, I believe you said this was a prior dump site.
That's where Kelly Ryan used to have their storage yard.
So I have no DEQ information on this, whether it's a hazardous site or not. That would have to be vetted through the Department of Environmental Quality of the state of Nebraska.
Is there anything in the listing? Is there anything in the brochure that says there's been any kind of environmental study on it?
No, it's a very,
Sometimes they did that ahead of time.
it's a very big.
Just said it's not the whole plane.
I didn't know if they took the equipment out or if it just slowly melted into the ground.
You may glow in the dark.
Mr. Chairman, I got a question for the jail committee, I guess specifically Jay. In your comments, you mentioned that you're looking at the potential of being able to build on site a 65 or 75 bed, whatever the number was concerned. That was kind of was that a recommendation of the jail committee?
It was discussed items of consensus that things that we agreed on that had been discussed. We agreed that a 60-bed jail wouldn't be feasible and that we should probably look at a 75, and everybody agreed on that.
Okay, no, but my question, 65 or 70 or 80, wherever that number ends up being, you also mentioned that to look at the courthouse site to see what size could actually be built on site. Is that?
Yeah, we had, there was.
That was your first thought, to see what's built on site before we go, having to have look on site?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think.
Okay, that's my question.
And somewhat concurrently.
So I guess so we can move on and have something to discuss here. I'm just gonna, not to construct, I don't like that word on there, but just to have, to look at sizing a jail center, Washington County Law Enforcement Criminal Justice Center to be placed on the current size. On the current side, what size could be put on there? Whether we could get 70, 75, I don't know. So I don't know, maybe that's not a very good motion. But to first look at the courthouse site to see what could be constructed here, and if it's feasible,
Those aren't my motions.
I know that. This is Carl's motion, I guess. He just asked about possible action. I guess we have, I think the sheriff would agree, oh, the sheriff's gone. Rob would agree. Oh, there he is, right there. we need to move forward. We need to have some kind of solid discussion on, can we build something here on site? And if we can, we have the ground, it's a quick, easiest way to get something fast.
It's the fastest way to get.
Well, to really move on, because if we don't move on this, we have to acquire ground, have to go through all that process. You're looking, if someone said to me, years, and someone said to me, well, what's another month? Well, you guys talk about transporting, and I'm the numbers guy. Every time we house inmates out, right now it's costing us about $75,000 a month. So every time we put this back another month from not being done, because that's what we're doing, is we're not getting this, the end month, another month is added on to the end. That's where we're at. We just keep adding on to the end. So we really, seriously, honestly want to move on in the most, well, the report said fiscal and feasible responsibility, but also the quickest way to take action. Let's see if it does fit on site. We don't have to go out and acquire ground. We don't have to, get the neighbors, because it's already here. So maybe Michael comment on this, but I just feel that we need to either take this option off the table and say it won't fit here, and then move on, or move on with this site here.
Question, how do you know if it'll fit until you get an architect to give you some
Right,
conceptual
and
drawings?
I'm not opposed to that.
So you're catch-22 situation here. We're saying 75 bed, will it fit? We don't know.
Right.
If we're Hoskin involved, do some
Right.
conceptual
I mean,
drawings and determine whether it'll fit.
It'll also narrow down the parameters of what we're going to negotiate with Prohaska about where we're headed. I'm not, again, I like to, yes, I oppose what we did to reaffirm, because I'm opposed to having to go back and recheck and redouble and revote on every other motion previous boards did. I accept previous boards. I want people to understand that. I accept what previous boards did, because I wasn't voting against Prohaska.
But that's not what you're asking.
I know,
me now.
but I'm just saying is, now we have a parameters, what we're going to negotiate with Prohaska to propose on the site.
Yes, something that we've been working on for 5 years, Steve.
Correct.
So in the grand scheme of things, in 5 years, an extra month is done, when this whole thing should have been done according to the timeline that was initially presented by Prohaska.
Yeah, I don't think that's
April of 2013 is when a decision and bids should have went out for whatever we were going to do. April of 2013, I have the timeline with me, that every board member on the board that time received. So when we're talking, 13 is now 17, 1 more month is not going to make or break this county.
I guess that's just an opinion.
See, well, that's the problem I was talking to you about earlier. That's the way Steve and I are used to things working. That's how the school boards do stuff. Well, then you know.
Right.
This is not being done that way here.
I'm not
And that's why it throws us off, because why did you do all this stuff, or not you, but why did the board do all the stuff they did outside of a normal process of doing a project like
But,
this?
I can't keep going back and work forward. You want to move forward.
Right,
That's what my motion is,
exactly.
to move forward. That's all my motion is, to move forward. The vote, you can vote it up or vote it down.
I think you're reaffirming what Jay's committee has outlined what they want to do.
Right.
They want
Well,
to see,
this is not Jay's motion.
I know, but it's, the plan that they laid out is what you're describing, is we need to find out if the 75 that Joe did on site, and if it doesn't, then, we need to make options.
I'm just making a motion so we have something to.
Steve, would you restate your motion?
Well, to.
Is it a motion or is it an amendment to ours?
No, that's.
Well, I didn't, I wasn't going with the actually construct. More or less, we need to open it up to look at the Washington County law enforcement, criminal justice to be placed on the current courthouse site, given the 75-bed jail.
No.
I mean, you guys said 75, right?
Yeah, it doesn't even,
So I'm
don't even
just going
start
over
down
this.
this, you might as well just let transport equipment go to 60.
No, because we need to vote on it. We need to see the clarification on this. Steve, would you write your motion down and pass it down?
Basically, it would just be, it says Washington County law enforcement. My motion is to, I guess, construct a new Washington County Law Enforcement Criminal Justice Center to be placed on the current courthouse side grounds. It should be 75 bed. Which,
I'd like to make a motion that we postpone the question indefinitely. It seems like we're trying to scrap together a motion on something that we've been trying to solve for 5 years. And if we can't coherently state a motion on a direction, then
well, okay, here's where I currently really want to do. I want to look at the Washington current jail site first.
and that's
To
what
build
the
a
jail
jail.
committees said that they will.
That's right,
be
so
doing.
they said it, but I'm putting it in motion. To look at the current facility site, to build the jail, like I said before. I mean, my motion before was to agree with the Prohaska report, that to build on site, I didn't have a number in there, to build on site, was most fiscal and feasible or something.
I'm gonna second the motion to table indefinitely.
Okay.
Okay.
So
You have to withdraw yours, or did you have a
So
second?
you never had a second on
Okay,
mine,
so
so I
yours
guess.
dies for lack of a second.
Okay.
So we have a motion on the floor to table and state what you want to table indefinitely. Be specific in what you want to table indefinitely.
Well, I mean,
My motion didn't get a
it
second,
didn't,
so.
so there's no motion to table. I mean, there's no motion to this.
That's what I'm saying.
Question.
There's
So
no-
unless this gets a second, then there's no relevancy to mine.
Okay,
Got a question?
yeah, go ahead.
Dennis McCormick, Blair, Nebraska. We talking about the new jail going to the south parking lot, or we talking about on the north?
We don't know that, we want to get to that point to
Okay,
get that.
that's what I want to know. There's more room on the north side than there is on the south side. If it's built on the north side, we don't have to move the tower out of it, it's gonna cost $260,000. And we don't tear the parking lot out of it. You put it on the north side, we still have the parking lot and the tower over here. The jail's on the north side, where it's at now, there's more room there. They can put the elevator on the north side as far as that goes.
Kind of funny how we all said the same thing.
Well, that's good. I want to make sure that
Yeah.
what we're talking about here.
That's the work the jail committee wants to do and needs to do before we pigeonhole ourselves to anything.
Correct, correct. Listen, if we're gonna do this, let's do it and do it right.
Right.
I don't want in 5 years say, well, we should have done this, or we should have done that, or we should have done this. Let's get it right, so that it is right. Thank you.
Guys, you guys figure out what you want to do.
Okay, I'm gonna offer a motion.
We need to send this back to the
Jay,
committee. Yeah.
I'm gonna offer,
Mr. Chairman?
yes,
Are you stepping out of the chair to
I don't need to,
bring forward a motion?
I don't need to, under Robert's rules of order. In meetings of a small board, where there are not more than a dozen members present, and in meetings of a committee, the presiding officer may exercise these rights and privileges as fully as any other member. So I have the right to make motions or anything.
Yeah, my understanding of Robert's rules is that it's customary for the chair to remove himself from the chair in order to bring forward a motion so that he's on equal status with the remaining members of the board.
You know, defer to the county attorney. County attorney, you have an opinion on that?
I honestly would have to look. I understand Robert's Rules of Order, this specific question, I would honestly have to look at it. I don't have an answer for you right off the top of my head, so.
In my research, where I don't have to, where I have an equal vote as anyone else, I have that ability to make a motion, make a second on the motion. I have that ability to do that.
As chair, you are the presiding authority.
That is true. And have, because I have equal rights as a presiding authority. Do we have a second? have a second?
Can you restate that?
Yeah. My motion is to enter into good faith negotiations with Prohaska and Associates for the design phase of the new Washington County Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice Center on a site to be determined by the Washington County Board of Supervisors. Negotiations will be conducted by a negotiating committee representing Washington County and Prohaska and Associates. Washington County negotiating committee members will be appointed by the Washington County Board Chairman.
Second.
Okay, motion by Lorenzo, second by Andreessen, to enter into good faith negotiations with Prohaska and Associates.
I believe the members of that negotiating committee should be the members of the jail committee, so that there's not separation again, like there was between site selection and jail committees previously.
That's what it would have been on the first motion was approved, but now that's being taken out of our hands with this one, so that's what you do when you vote on this, you put it all in chairman's hands.
Further discussion?
We didn't have any motion to enter into this.
To start, for them to send us a contract to look at, agreement to look at.
One of the problems I have is the language of your motion doesn't seem to be connected with the agenda item.
We're talking about placement either on or off site, and that's what the motion does. It allows us to enter into good faith negotiations for a contract so that we can move forward with the design phase on the site, yet to be determined on or off site.
That's a good point, Steve. Yeah, there's two possible actions there that are separate, and the motion combines them.
Which one do you want?
Any other discussion? Comments from the public? Mike?
I would ask that,
State your name.
Mike Anderson, excuse me. Thank you. I would ask that, again, that the jail committee be, as Chairman, or Lisa Kramer stated, that the jail committee should be part of this if this should pass. They should be the committee handling this. The committee, I finally, after been to several of these meetings, I finally have seen a jail committee report. I've never seen one prior to this. I've heard that we couldn't find the property, or we couldn't find it. I never had seen anything printed out ever before. It may have happened, but I hadn't seen it. So I feel that the committee, the new committee, in its very young stages here, has made a valiant effort to move this ball forward, and I think that, I think what's gonna happen here is trying to cut the rug out from underneath them here by, having, separation and putting all the power in, this motion puts all the power in the chairman's hand to appoint this committee. And from, at least from where I sit, I feel that I see the way the chairman feels about this issue, and I just don't see this is gonna be a fair game.
How do I feel about the issue?
I think,
Explain that.
I personally feel that you have done everything you can to avoid moving this ball forward on the Hewitt Green site, I can tell you that.
I mean, because of my vote on December 27th?
I mean, because of everything, I mean, because of being on the site selection committee and coming up with no viable properties. Being on the site selection committee, and when someone says, what about this property here, you say, well, there's a lot of dirt to move. And when someone says, well, how much dirt, you don't have an answer for that. You know, there's a piece of property down here that you wrote a letter to the owner on, and that property was, from what my understanding, when I checked on it, was valued at $30,000 an acre. Yet up the hill where we have to move dirt, it was valued at much less, but no one has done the attempt to figure out if the lesser value equals moving the dirt or not. I don't think that, Carl, I don't think that you have the best interests of the taxpayer of the county in mind on this issue. That's what I think.
Mike, we had 10 properties that were brought forward on December 13th on the agenda. It was taken off the agenda. No one has put it back on the agenda and to discuss all those properties. They all have drawbacks, they all have pluses and minuses. And, I'd be happy to entertain, anybody wants to talk about those properties, I'd be happy to entertain an agenda item to discuss all those properties. I just brought forth another property today.
We have the jails committee, have you submitted that list to the jail committee? Said, hey,
The
look
site-
at this is some of the work that I've done in the past, and some of the other board members have
The
done in
site
the past.
selection committee does not exist anymore because Jeff Quist and Mary Ellis.
That's what I asked you if it existed anymore. I asked you if you passed it on that information to the new jail committee. Did you do that?
The new jail committee, Lisa Kramer has the information, has had the information, and I'd be happy, the information.
Will you formally submit it to them now?
Sure, nobody's made that request, all the offsite.
So this is about requests, not about what, just because somebody didn't ask you, you didn't do that. That's what you're saying.
Certainly they can have that information. That's why we're still discussing offsite and onsite.
I would recommend tabling this motion.
Yes, Bill, come forward, please.
Chairman?
William Burtis, Fort Calhoun. I'm troubled about something here. I personally don't think that Prohaska has acted in good faith in what he did. He offered a bid or one for on-site out here. He offered an off-site one. The complications with building one out here and the size of it make it more likely or more that you would go off-site on it. They did not give a bid or a proposal for building one on the north side out here, which is far more better than what it is. And this jail committee people that sit there and because they want their way, they want to bully the board on it. They're saying that you ain't for the taxpayer. I happen to know the difference on it. I'm for the taxpayer. I pay quite a bit of taxes on it. And the most economical way is to build it out here on the north side where we have the land. There is room to build the size that you need, and there is room for expansion. And I think, I was talking to Jeff, and he said that there was a proposal about 20 years ago with an architectural drawing of what it would look like. So it's all that's already been there on it. This idea that you can just sit there and give this site, you have to move the pavement, take care of all of this pavement out. You have to tear the tower out, move it on it. You're going to build a new parking lot out there on the north side anyway. You got a parking lot here. Why the hell would you change it? It just doesn't make sense. There's no common sense to it at all on it. They said that this jail committee that went there, they listened to these law enforcement people and Prohaska, and as far as I'm concerned, they were completely brainwashed on it, bullied into what they think. That's my personal opinion.
Thanks, Bill. One of the things you have to understand, and we're losing ground here, but you have to understand that before we can move forward and do anything with Prohaska and Associates, we have to have a contract. We do not have a contract at this point in time. We have an amendment letter that states that we will negotiate and enter into an owner-architect agreement. That has to be negotiated. Don's here. Don, would you not agree to that? That we have to do that?
Yes, sir, that's
Okay.
the general protocol.
So that's what I'm asking the board to do is let's negotiate. And I'm not willing to just have Prohaska and Associates submit a contract that we take a look at. I think that this board needs to set parameters for that contract. Rather than come back and amend a contract, why not work on that contract together? That's what it's all about.
I believe the motion that passed, it was Jay Anderson's motion, speaks to that. I believe that is a negotiation of a contract that will do what you're wanting to do.
Whatever he submits, we're all gonna have input on
Why not sit down together?
it. because you wanna choose 3 people to do it.
I really don't care. That was my motion. If you want to vote the motion down, vote the motion down. It does have a second. Any further discussion? I call for the vote.
Five members voting no, Lorenzen and Kruger voting yes, motion does not carry.
Okay, next item on the agenda is to discuss financing options for potential new Washington County law enforcement and criminal justice center. Dee Davidson, Phil Lorenzen stuck around, so.
Carl,
Before you go on that, could I have a comment?
Sure, go ahead.
Maybe. Jeff Quist again. You know, we kind of, it seems like the board has an idea what they want to do. Maybe it needs to be priorities. You know, we have the site that's been discussed, but just put an addition on the jail and courtrooms and an elevator and all this kind of stuff off in the north yard. We don't disturb anything else around. Probably the most cost-effective, probably the quickest way to resolve the issue. And I'm not seeing what you have to do here. I'm just making a suggestion. Maybe that's what your motion is. We just select this north yard site for your expansion, focus on that, and if that's not feasible, then you move to something else. But at least you have a priority and a spot to go to and continue on for the things.
I think that's what Mr. Kruger is trying to get to. Is that not right, Steve?
Yes.
Well, you know, that's where I was headed with it. Apparently I couldn't word it exactly how. I just thought, you know, look at this site and see if we can build on this site. That was my point. If you can't build on site, then they have to go off site. That was my motion, and it seemed to me like I didn't say it specifically the way people wanted to. They didn't second it, well, that's fine. I guess I don't want to be accused by the sheriff. I don't want to be accused by anybody that I'm the one stalling this process. This last motion again, when you vote that down, now you're saying you're not going to negotiate with Prohaska. Well, it says we have to. I don't understand what was voted on that. Maybe they were concerned about who was going to be on the committee. But at the end of the day, this board is going to vote on anything negotiated. Who negotiates it or whatever, this board votes on it. So, you know, I'm not following along with the process here when everyone says it's a concern, we need to have inmate housing and safe passage to the courtroom. Then let's head towards that. Let's get to that point, whether it's on the north side, south side, west side, maybe we close the street or whatever, I don't know, but something is just, it just seems like, I don't know what else can be brought up for. So,
Can a new motion be brought forth?
Absolutely.
All I'm saying is it seems like we're kind of talking past each other right here.
Even though we wanna all do the same
They
thing.
all want to do it the same way and do that, well then say that's
Yeah.
what you want to do and get a motion out there that does that entirely. Leave it up to the jail committee, do your work and move on.
Can I move that we move forward with Cheska and Associates to enter into a contract and look at, negotiate a contract and look at designing 75 beds on the north side, and we'll work that out with the jail committee and bring it forth to the board for vote. And if at that time that plan does not work, we move forward to the next phase of what will work. I know that's kind of a long motion.
My understanding from committee was that there was gonna be concurrence between looking at sites and looking at the feasibility of the 75 on-site. I don't know if we're to the point yet that we pinpoint that we are going to do this. I think we need to look at the feasibility out of committee with Prohaska and determine that, and once we have that information, it moves forward.
I think for the general public's knowledge, especially some people that write about this stuff, this would be a good civics lesson for them to listen what's going on here. We believe that some of us on the committee and some of us not, that there are things we can do on site here that weren't looked at the first time around. That's no fault of the others, and that's why we're so hesitant supporting an option 2. So what we would like to do is have that re-looked at again by Prohaska with all these things that have been mentioned out here, because I agree with what everybody said on that. And if it can't be done, then we've got a united front to move to option 2.
I agree with that. When we were in committee, the discussion was had that we need to be,
Excuse me, before we discuss this, we need a second on the motion, if there is a second.
I'll second it. Guess it sounded better in my motion, so.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Andreessen, seconded by Kruger, to negotiate a contract with the Hoskins Associations to look at the north side of the courthouse and have the jail committee bring forward proposals after proposals for such. And if that doesn't work, then move to an alternative position.
so what I was saying is that's not what we discussed in the committee, which was that it would go concurrently with a site selection analysis that includes both on-site and off-site, so that we're not wasting time, that we're doing both. This motion, I believe, prevents that, because we're saying that we will only move forward with any other sites if this fails, if it's not feasible. I'm agreeable that if we need to for consensus, to build on-site, if it becomes the most feasible option, most cost-effective option, the best option, I'm okay with that if that's what comes of a more analytical process. Right now, we've had conjecture about sites. We have not had an analytical process, and I believe that the committee needs to be able to move forward with that with Prohaska before a motion goes forward that says, yes, this is what we decided through a process was feasible, and this is what we think is the best option. And one of the things I mentioned, sheriff's office and do anything with foresight. So we talked about making sure that whatever we did going forward would include foresight, not just for housing of inmates for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is, but what happens then when the next stage of expansion is needed? There needs to be some kind of understanding about what we're gonna do then, because if we spend 15, 12 million, whatever, however many millions of dollars it is to build a facility on site, it will at some point be under capacity. And we've just dropped a whole lot of money here where we don't have any options beyond that. We need to be making sure that we're using good foresight, and that's why I believe the committee is the best suited to look at those options and then bring a recommendation back to the full board that says, look, we dove into all of this, we do think that this is the best option, and whether that is on-site or whether that is through an analytical process that's an off-site, at least there's some science behind it. There's a process behind it. So for that reason, not that I disagree with moving forward on-site, I'm gonna vote no on your motion.
Other discussion?
Mr. Chair, can I approach?
Done.
Thank you. My name's Don Prohaska, Prohaska Associates. I appreciate all the hard work that you've invested. I know that this is hard stuff. Nobody enjoys building a jail. At least we not work in the same community. Yet they said, yippee, we got a new jail. So what happens is it's very divisive. It tends to take otherwise fairly unified communities and fracture them. And it's not you, it's the industry, it's this type of project. School bonds can be tough too, when corn goes from $8 to $3.75, but these are always tougher. So I want you to think about something. I'm agnostic about where your jail goes, because it should go where you want it to go. And you should put it where you want to put it based on the information that we provide to you. We should look at the north, we should look at the south, we should look at the brownfield, we should look at greenfields. We should give you 3 or 4 options. If you were buying a car right now, or as a board, you wouldn't make a motion to look at 2 cars. you would you would make a motion probably to look at the universe of cars or dump trucks or motor graders. And that's really, I think what you're doing in a sense, maybe unwittingly, is you're just limiting yourselves by saying, well, just look at putting it here, or look at putting it there. As long as you hire a consultant that's competent, you should have them look at everything for you. No, within reason. I mean, you don't want to chase windmills, no Don Quixote acts. But I think that there are a lot of options that after you see 2 or 3 or 4, you might change your minds. We might change our minds. So you don't have to vote on brownfield versus greenfield. I agree with Steve. My first preference would always be to put it in proximity to the place that exists, so that law enforcement doesn't have the added burden and risk associated with transport and cost. That would be the ideal situation. And you know, we're in Blair. In New York City, they figure out how to build stuff, including jails and prisons that go high. I'm not saying you should do that, but I'm saying that don't think that you're as limited maybe as you might have been told in the past, because you can do other things. And we can waterproof floors, and we can do all kinds of things to kind of idiot-proof the design, if you will. So I would suggest that you ask us to do everything possible for you, because you shouldn't have to have arguments over this. Because frankly, you don't have enough. You don't have any drawings, you don't have any pictures, you don't have any cost estimates. You've really got nothing except personal opinions, which are important, but sometimes we kind of dig in, you know, with those opinions. And I've been wrong a lot of times because I didn't have all the information I'd like to have. So I understand what you were saying. I understand the division. Some people have said, well, isn't this kind of tough for you? And I said, no, this is jail work. This is the way it is. It's not easy to get these things built because you got so many different interests, so many different stakeholders. So what I would suggest is try not to limit yourself. Try to charge your consultant with giving you everything you can possibly get out of it. Again, if somebody was selling you a car, you wouldn't want to look at 2 cars. You might want to look at everything on the lot, and that's really all. You know, it might be a poor analogy, but that's what I think you ought to attempt to do. So with that, questions? Any questions?
Question.
Yeah.
Number one, currently, do we have any kind of negotiated contract to move forward with you on a dollar amount, even if we were to ask you to look at this? Is there a dollar, or is there anything out there that says, yeah, Prohaska would look into this for X number of dollars, right? Do we have a contract like that, sir?
We did.
Just yes or no, I guess that's all.
Well, it's not just a yes or no. It's yes,
Either
but.
we do or we don't. But
Yeah,
Okay.
it's an iterative process, and the basic services contract would be conditioned on what size the project is. I mean, we can't give you a fee. If you ask me what a car costs, I'd say, Steve, $2,500 or $300,000. So I don't know.
Yeah, so on that, you know, same thing, I guess you said we can give you the information, correct? That's what you just stated. What additional information are you going to bring forth that you didn't bring forth in this study right here?
Sure.
I mean, is there something you left out for us to study? Is there something left out of this that we should have evaluated more? I mean, I thought we were praying for a concise plan at this time. We contracted with you to come up with a plan, and so either.
So you didn't give him any feedback or any
Yes, we did.
input or anything whatsoever? You just told him to go figure it out on your own and design it?
No, we met.
Okay.
Yeah.
We met
All right.
several times,
Yeah.
correct?
So he took the input from you guys
Yeah.
for that design?
Jail committee, sheriff was there, everybody was in these rooms all the time.
Yeah.
So that's all placed into this process here. So
Well, that's a
my-
snapshot in time, yes.
Right, and my question is, was there something that we didn't cover, you know, that should have been put into this process? I mean, that's what I just heard. We'll bring back the information to
Yeah.
you that you need to have. Well, what didn't we have with this one?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we collectively did not do is we did not bring the public along with the planning process. And that becomes problematic, because then people are wondering what's going on. It took us almost 5 years to do 9 months worth of work. There's something just conspicuously wrong with that. So I'm not saying that that study has all the answers into it. I mean, if you did the study today, it would be different than that study. It's what, two years old, 3, I don't know.
How,
But you'd have different inputs.
so just.
Yeah, we have different inputs, different forces, different needs. At one point in time, I think people really seriously questioned some of our projections. Did you all bring in another demographer or somebody from the university to look at numbers? Somebody, I think, to challenge
Right,
the
well, you
numbers.
know, that was our privilege to make sure that we're verifying everything we're doing.
Right, but the point I'm making is that you couldn't believe it. You couldn't believe that we were gonna have this demand for 100 beds by such and such a year. You recall that?
I understand that.
Okay.
And you guys backed your numbers.
Well, we backed them down because you folks insisted that that was not possible. And we did it under duress, okay? You are the client, you are the owner. And we can say, Steve, we don't agree with you, but we're gonna work for you. We're gonna do what you ask us or charge us with do.
I think you've answered my question.
Okay.
From my knowledge, so whether people catch
I mean,
on.
there is a fundamental change. All the talk has been 60 beds.
Yes.
And now I think it's a pretty good consensus that it's 75. So that changes the whole dynamic of the process.
When we started, honestly, too, Steve, you know, the state was not at 160% of capacity. I mean, I'm talking about prisons now, not jails. And this is kind of backwashing this in a lot of the county jails. And we got 10,000, you know, years of shortened sentences because of mathematical errors. So we have 25% of the world's inmates in the United States, and we got 5% of the population. We got an issue, we got a problem. What used to be drunk tanks are now drug tanks. So what you're doing isn't easy. And I'm not in any way upset about the discussion and even some of the tension. I mean, I don't necessarily enjoy it, but I don't dislike it. It's a good argument to have. It's an intellectual argument. But every year that passes, Steve, that $75,000 a month does turn into real money. You're right. And remember, you took the capacity of your jail in order to meet Nebraska jail standards. You agreed to have the capacity from 31 to 17 beds. And now you see what the financial impact of that was. So I think seeing is believing. So is that study fresh off the press? Not by a long shot. It needs to be refreshed and updated.
You can withdraw the motion, the second, third. Can I withdraw my motion to restate it?
Sure.
Who's first?
Oh, no.
No, I live in Blair, Nebraska. Carl, I think the motion that you made, from what I said here in the conversation, except for the last portion when we tried to define the committee, that motion, the upper portion of that motion does what we're trying to do here, or what you're trying to do, which is move things forward.
Glenn?
Glenn Upperman, 13342, State Highway 91. Just several quick comments. First, thanks to the new jail committee for getting me here quickly. Next thing is, and this is a grain of salt, based on what Don was just saying, I don't know how much faith you have in this now. I have a lot of faith in this. It's the Prohaska report from 2012. Page number 2. If you look at that graph, which shows a graph of the incarceration rate and the linear regression line of the estimated number of jail beds, and then what year we reach those capacities. So if you draw a line over from 75 beds, you're going to come out in 2025 approximately, maybe 2026. The line's not perfectly straight, so just be aware of that 75 beds.
There's other factors that go into this that also are part of that study. If you read about the new types of diversion programs, the supervised release, working with the judges,
right.
so that population is actually in the jail.
There's also the 80% rule too, isn't there?
Well, it just depends on the design of the jail. There's ways to build housing to address.
So that number's not there.